let's go over things related to simulation distance, including chunks, chunk borders, how to find those, and what simulation distance even is. This is a really important topic for Redstone, especially when we're moving items around or building a large machine, such as on a personal storage system. Now, the default simulation distance is 4, but if you're not sure what simulation you're on, you can always go to Settings, Game, and then scroll down where it says Simulation Distance. This is essentially how many chunks in each direction from a player is loaded in regards to redstone and other functionality. So for example, crops will grow as long as they are within simulation distance of a player. But if things go outside of simulation distance, they just disappear. The game no longer processes what they're supposed to be doing. This is all calculated from the chunk that the player is standing in. It just counts out simulation distance number of chunks in each horizontal direction, and then connects them in a semi-diamond shape. Now, another caveat is that simulation distance goes all the way from bedrock to build limit. So whether you have crops or redstone all the way down at bedrock and all the way up to build limit, they will all be active as long as you are within the horizontal range. But before we get too far into it, let's talk more about why this is important, then look at how we actually find individual chunks and individual borders. Because especially for things like item sorters and personal storage systems, chunk borders and chunks and simulation distance are very, very important. We don't want certain parts of the item sorter to cross chunk borders, nor do we want to build a personal storage system that goes outside of simulation distance. Because if any section of the item sorter is unloaded because it's outside of simulation distance, the whole system will just fail because it's using item transportation and the items won't be able to move past the unloaded area. Now you might notice that entities such as chests will disappear when you get a certain distance away, and this actually has no impact on their functionality whatsoever. This is a completely different topic that is entity render distance. This is totally visual and has no impact on the functionality. The game can still see that the chest is there even if you, the player, cannot. As long as that chest is within simulation distance, it will work as intended. Your entire Minecraft world is made up of chunks. Chunks are 16 by 16 areas that stretch from bedrock to build limit. Now, chunks are predetermined and will never change. There are several different ways that we can map them out. We can use third-party add-ons such as Foxy No-Tail's marker pack to give us a visual display of where the chunks are. Or we can do it at any time simply by looking at our coordinates. Chunk borders are always at multiples of 16 and multiples of 16 minus 1. So if we simply find an x and z coordinate that are both divisible by 16, that are multiples of 16, and then simply subtract 1 from each of those coordinates, those are 4 chunk corners. 4 chunks that are touching each other are on multiples of 16 and multiples of 16 minus 1 on the x and z coordinate. So if we simply find those, mark them out, we now know where the corners of 4 chunks are. And since chunks are always 16 by 16, we can simply count out 15 blocks from those 4, and that will give us 4 individual chunks. And then we can just check the next set of corners to make sure they are multiples of 16 and multiples of 16 minus 1. Now, if you don't like using math and you can't use add-ons for whatever reason, you can always go to chunkbase.com. This has a ton of resources to let you see your map, but luckily for chunk borders on Bedrock, they are all the same. It doesn't matter what your world seed is, it doesn't matter what game version you're playing on, it doesn't even matter what app you use inside of Chunkbase. We simply go down to the bottom left and insert our coordinates of where we want to find the chunk, and then click on Details, and right here under Chunk, it will tell you the coordinates of the corners of that chunk. So these coordinates will also be multiples of 16 and multiples of 16 minus 1. So then you can just map out those 4 listed coordinates, and that will be your chunk. It will be the 4 corners of an individual chunk. Now your center chunk is where you assume the player will be. The entire sim distance will be loaded anytime a player is within that center chunk. But from that chunk, you simply count over 4 chunks in each direction, go over by 1, and then connect them diagonally. And that is the simulation distance for Sim 4. And a lot of times it's nice to actually go ahead and map this out. That way you know exactly what is loaded and from where. So no matter what kind of farms or redstone you want to add to your base area or your personal storage, you'll know exactly where to put them. So here we have a couple of clocks and a couple of lamps to use as an example. One of each is outside of what we marked as simulation distance, and the other is inside of simulation distance. So as we can see, as long as I'm within this center chunk, only one of the clocks is actually active. But the other one will be active as soon as I cross the chunk border, lowering the distance between me and that clock. And in the same way with the static lamps that just have a redstone line attached to a lever, if I flick this lever, the only lamp that turns on is the one that's within simulation distance from me. The one that is on the other side of that chunk border down there is unloaded and won't turn on until we load that chunk by crossing this chunk border. And as you may notice, the state of the redstone gets frozen when it becomes unloaded. So if the lamp was on when I moved into this center chunk, it just freezes to the on position. And this is extra important for things such as item sorters. Because on item filters, we never want to have the hoppers for the filter to be in a different chunk than the redstone that is locking those hoppers. Because if we cross the chunk border and unload the redstone torch, as soon as that torch turns off, well, now there is no longer anything that is locking those hoppers. The game just assumed that the redstone torch was supposed to be off, and now it's unloaded, so nothing can turn it back on. And because of that, the hoppers will end up draining all of their items completely, which will break your item sorter, break your filters. So especially if the item line is within simulation distance where items will be continually moving through, we always want to have the hoppers and the thing locking the hoppers be in the same chunk. Because as items are going through a filter, the torch is turning on and off. So if we unload that torch as soon as it turns off, then it just locks to the off position and drains the hoppers. Now technically, this can only happen if you stand on the hopper side in the perfect place, where the hoppers are still loaded, but the torch is not. Now another thing we want to keep in mind when it comes to chunk borders is we don't want to have hoppers pushing across chunk borders if we can avoid it. So we don't want our chest to be in one chunk and the hoppers feeding those chests to be in a different chunk. The reason for this is that hoppers that are pushing into unloaded chunks is pretty laggy. Generally, hoppers are not laggy at all, but if they are full and they are pushing into an unloaded chunk, that will generate lag. Now, a really important one when it comes to water streams is you do not want to have the water stream and the hoppers be separated by a chunk border. If the hoppers that are supposed to pull in items are in one chunk and the item stream is in a different chunk, the hoppers really struggle pulling items across chunk borders. Now, you will occasionally be forced into crossing a chunk border with hoppers and water. And that's where the hopper right after the chunk, the very first hopper on the very first block of the next chunk, will struggle to grab items. So we generally need to slow the water stream down so that the items slow down as they cross the chunk border. This will give the hopper enough time to actually grab those items. But you never ever want to split the water stream and the hoppers with a chunk border directly in the middle. So all in all, whatever redstone or farms or crops you want to be active from a specific location, you simply include those within simulation distance. And especially when it comes to a personal storage system, if you max out the simulation distance area, then you can't leave that center chunk. You have to AFK in the center chunk for this entire area to be active. Where the smaller of an area you choose to build your farm's redstone or personal storage, the more area that you can wander around while it is all still active, loaded, and within sim. For example, if you have your personal storage system be in these center 3x3 chunks, you can be anywhere. You, the player, can wander anywhere in this entire mapped out area, and it will still all be loaded. It gives you much more wiggle room the smaller that you make things, because simulation distance doesn't change. It is just an area. It can be extremely helpful to map everything out and know what's going to be active and from where. It can help you avoid problems and improve efficiency, as well as be able to get a handle on lag. You know, the more things that you include within simulation distance, the more lag that will be generated. But like I mentioned before, there's this common misconception that hoppers are laggy, just existing. And on Bedrock, Hoppers are very optimized. Here is 100,000 hoppers in a normal world, and I have no lag whatsoever. I can still quick place blocks, I can still break them, mobs are still walking around normally. I'm not losing a single frame from 100,000 hoppers. But if hoppers are full and are pushing across chunk borders, that is extremely laggy. It only takes a handful of those hoppers to lag out an entire world. But certain entities are laggy. For example, if you have like 600 to 1,000 chests, that will lag out the entire world. Same way with item frames, glowing text, paintings, armor stands is really bad. If you just have like 30 armor stands, it will lag out the world. It's crazy. But yeah, just when it comes to hoppers, when it comes to storage systems, and when it comes to your bases, it's really nice to understand simulation distance and be able to not only avoid problems, but optimize efficiency and help cut down on lag. We can do all of this simply by mapping out sim, mapping out chunks, and going from there. Like a lot of times, I don't map out simulation distance for every single project that I do. I mean, most of the time, I don't even mark out chunk borders unless it's really important. But when it comes to my main base, the place that I'm gonna live and build all of these micro farms all over the place, I start off by measuring out simulation distance. So I know exactly where everything will be loaded and from what. I'll generally build the heart of my base as the middle square in the simulation distance. And generally I'll have that be an iron farm. And then in the center, surrounding that chunk, I'll build my farms and stuff that I want to be active no matter where I am at my base. Just your personal storage and all that other stuff is tied into all of this as well. So I hope this made sense and I hope this helped you out. That's all we got for this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe. Always remember that you are totally awesome, but above all, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.